Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Luna Unscripted, where we talk about real life, real career paths, clinical insights, and just share the nitty-gritty details of life as a PT. I'm Katie Wiley, one of your hosts,
And I'm Joe Valdez.
And I'm Marcia Arenas.
and we have a wonderful guest with us today. We have one of our team members, Michelle, with us. Michelle, you want to introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I'm Michelle. I've been a PT for about almost 10 years now. I'm also an athletic trainer, and yeah, I live in Miami, and it's pretty much about me. Happy to be here.
Yeah, and we specifically asked Michelle to come on today because she has a little bit of a unique clinical background and perspective. I think all of us can agree who treated in the outpatient world that like treating athletes was like the joy of our time. Like anytime we could get those young active athletes in the clinic and get to treat them through their plan of care, it was always so wonderful. And Michelle has had the awesome experience of treating and building a caseload of athletes throughout the spectrum, right? Especially like professional athletes. So we wanted to have you on just to hear about how you got into that, hear about your background and kind of all the fun things related to like treating athletes.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess it all started back in high school, actually. I would volunteer at a PT clinic where I would rehab myself for an ACL tear that I underwent. And when I was volunteering, the owner kind of took me under his wing and, was showing me the ropes as far as I always wanted to get involved. So he worked with a lot of MLB players at the time. And so he would say, hey, do you want to come out with us to the field? We're going to go throw. It'll be a good experience for you to help out and kind of, see what it's like. And at that point, I was probably a junior in high school and I was really intrigued by it. And I figured, well, maybe I want to be a PT, kind of leading into what you want to be when you grow up. And so he kind of recommended, because there was no track for me to go into PT like an undergrad, and he was an athletic trainer himself, and he's like, I actually recommend you go into the athletic training realm of things, because you get really good hands-on experience. So I kind of started seeing what all that was like, being out there, with the guys throwing. Not that I would throw or catch anything, but I would kind of just, learning all the stuff that they would do before and after and things like that. And I kind of learned some mechanisms of, what could lead to injuries and things like that. So I was like just trying to get as much, I was kind of like a sponge, right? Like absorb as much information as possible. So I kind of started there. And then when I went into undergrad, I went to Florida State and I went into the athletic training major, which was an amazing experience. I mean, every semester you're put with a different team and basically your classes are just around that. And so, you're there before every practice, during every practice, after, going to games, going on the road. So it was really cool. And so I feel like that's where I started building a rapport with what would potentially be athletes around the world, learning how and we had like a wide variety of athletes from all over. So yeah, I just did that. And then once I graduated there, I went back to that PT clinic when I went back home to Miami, and I started working as an athletic trainer. And again, it was kind of like, okay, now we got all these guys in off season. Let's go. Like, you have the experience, you're a certified athletic trainer. So kind of just started going into that. I worked at a local high school as an athletic trainer while I was trying to finish up some classes for PT school, like the prereqs. And that high school was where Alex Rodriguez went to school. So like a lot of people would come visit and like would train from there as like MLB players too. And I really just don't like baseball, but here we are.
That's actually a
And so,
good question. So you mentioned not like being able to throw or catch. Like, do you have like were you in sports growing up or like had a father?
yeah.
What sports did you play?
Yeah, I played soccer, so like throwing a ball in was like not anything that I would have any idea
Yeah,
about.
that's the
No
only
hand-eye
sport I
coordination.
did not play. That one I was like, soccer, no thank you. Oh, I've been watching the World Cup with that on now. I'm like, all right,
Yeah,
this is kind of fun. This is festive. But I'm like every other
yeah,
sport. But at least, yeah,
that's
so
so
you
fun.
did soccer. Awesome.
Yeah,
And
yeah, and that's actually like the sport I've worked the least with, which is kind of ironic. But yeah, and so then from there, I kind of I went to PT school. I still was working with players and stuff on, spring break or whatever the case may be as an athletic trainer. And then I don't know, the world kind of just like sucked me in. It was kind of just like it's a who you know kind of world. It's and so I knew people and they asked me like, hey, can you work on me? And it kind of just like trickled into something where I started working on professional athletes while I was in PT school as an athletic trainer. And then there I was like, well, I gotta study for my boards. I'm not like a PT yet, but I could treat you because I'm an athletic trainer. And then that kind of just turned into a whole thing. And next thing you know, I'm traveling here and traveling there for different athletes. And it's all for me personally, I'm not like I don't post anything necessarily about who I'm working with or anything like that. It's just kind of like word of mouth. And I think that it's kind of like gone a long way for me personally.
Yeah, they probably appreciate that, right? Because they don't want, it blasted out like maybe this person, or if they have something that they're maybe like struggling with, they also don't want that advertised out too, right? Kind of
Yeah,
like
absolutely. Yeah, I think you have to know who you're working with. Like some people are all about social media, especially in today's world. I'm not that person. And my athletes do, but like on their terms. And I would never ask like, hey, can I post this? Or, I'm just not that kind of person.
Yeah.
I'm curious on like some of those relationships you built up until now. Do you feel like athletes that you're working with as an athletic trainer back in college or maybe like in PT school, are those the ones that are providing those like word of mouth referrals for you still, or is it like a newer batch, I guess, nowadays in terms of like how you get your new clients?
Yeah. I think it's still a mix. Like a lot of them, like I work with a few football players, and it's one of those things where they'll fly me out and then they'll be like, they're on they've been in the league for a while. So they're kind of like the mentors now. And so they'll be like, oh, I have this rookie, can you start working on him too? And so they'll like kind of facilitate that. Or one of my clients loves to put on like a camp in the off season. And it's not for kids, it's like for the team to kind of just bond and be together. And so he'll fly me out for that and I'll work on a few guys, and then it kind of turns into something organic of like, okay, I'm going to be here. Can you work on X, Y, and Z? My original client obviously gets first priority as far as like timing and stuff. And then everyone kind of like works around that. And then from there's been some that have moved to Miami, for example. And so that's really convenient for me because I can just see you every day if I need to. So a lot of it is just word of mouth from them. I've had like two maybe reach out to me over social media, and it's because I'll post like something super random, not like anything in particular. I guess one is actually from a local high school here in Miami. It's the all boys school to the all girls school I went to. And so it was kind of like a network kind of thing. And I actually worked at the training. I'm a lot older than him. But I worked at the training facility in PT school that he was training at when he was in high school. And so I didn't know that until I was working with him. Like, were you that guy that, whatever? And he's like, yeah. And so it was just like a funny thing. But yeah, I think it's kind of like they refer me and then it kind of just like trickles. Or I've had like I know a PT who can't fly out to, let's say, Oregon. And then when I was living there. And so then he was like, hey, I have a guy in Oregon. I can't get out there because it was COVID. That's kind of how this started. Can you see them? And then I did. And then we kind of just formulated like, a working relationship. And so it was easy because I was already in Oregon, and to come from Miami to Oregon, if you don't know, it's a really long trek and a lot of flights to take. So that just like worked out that way, but it's kind of just organic. And so like I said, it's all who you know.
Yeah, it seems like an endless funnel of just referrals, right? Because the rookies are going to become the vets, right? And then the vets have to become
Exactly.
the rookies, and then you could be doing this for a while if you want to, right?
Yeah, no, I don't want to at all.
How does that dynamic work with like the team physical therapists and things like that when they are like, how is that dynamic? And do you guys collaborate, or is it kind of like contentious, or how does that
Yeah, that's a famous question I get often actually. So I don't collaborate with them at all unless they reach out to me. And it's not for any particular reason that I don't want to or anything like that. I think as I've come to know this world, the players like to have their own people. And so it's kind of like a church and state kind of thing, right? Like you do your thing in there and I do my thing out here. we don't always agree or see eye to eye, and it's not because I don't think that the PTs who work in-house are bad. I think they're really great and I think they're really qualified. I just think it's the organization as a whole who they're a business, and so they don't always put the players first. Like to them, the player playing is what's going to give them money. But what they don't understand is that the player's body is what gives them money, right? So if you don't honor that, then you're not going to get a player who's going to play. So I think the people who work for the organization are kind of caught in this really tricky position. And so I don't think it has anything to do with their skill, their abilities, or anything like that. I just think it's who they're reporting to that makes the final decisions on certain things. So most of the time they may or may not know I exist. I don't know. I know they exist, but it doesn't matter to me. And I don't make shots on like you can play, you don't play. Like I don't have a say in that. I might give my opinion, or like we'll discuss something that they may have, told them like, hey, we want you to maybe do this procedure or that procedure. And thankfully, the people I've worked with, they're very firm in like getting second opinions and outside doctors and things like that. They're not just compliant to what the organization says, which they may or may not like, but it's their body and that's what's going to make them, their money to supply for their family. So yeah, it can get contentious at times. I did have one organization who was really great. The only organization that's ever reached out to me. It was an NBA team, and they wanted to know about my player as far as like limitations they have, areas that they should work on, mobility. Like they actually cared about the individual, which was shocking, and they wanted kind of like a full breakdown on what we work on and things like that. So I actually really appreciated that. And that was only once that I've ever experienced that.
Maybe because NBA players are like typically a little more long lasting, right? Like they can stay in the league like a little bit longer compared to like a football player. Like think of their tenure
Yeah,
being
maybe.
shorter. I mean, just a thought.
Yeah.
You
It's
guys
just
ever?
league is very different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
curious to know what kind of are you doing mostly manual work? Like, are you certified in dry needling or any extensive techniques like that? Are you doing mostly manual work or is it like form and function? What kind of stuff are you like? So for people interested maybe in doing that, things they can look into.
That's a good question. I am certified in dry needling level 1 and 2. I do a lot of manual work. I would say that's one of my like favorite areas of PT. However, for me, it just depends on the athlete. Because like when I first started, I worked with an NBA player and I did everything. Like I did workouts, I did like physical therapy, I did manual work. Every now and then we would bring in his strength coach from college to kind of fly out, and then we worked really well together. So I wouldn't have to deal with the strength and conditioning side of things, which I preferred. I like to do, exercises, but I'm not a strength and conditioning coach. So like for me, it was just kind of like I can put it together, and like he would often send stuff, and so I can implement it because I know how to do all that stuff. But so I don't really do the strength and conditioning side of things. But I would put him like through workouts and, form and function stuff. I did a lot of manual therapy. I did a lot of dry needling, like Graston technique, cupping, all the things. We have the Normatec boots I'll travel with, and I would be the one that would set up IVs if needed to, hyperbaric chambers if we needed to, ozone therapy if we needed to. I would be the one to organize all of that, both on the road and at home. So I was kind of like the director of performance in his like little bubble, for lack of a better term. If we needed a chef or we needed to get an Airbnb, I would be the one to kind of like contact all these people. So I would take care of that for him. Now, a client I have now, he is very particular. And so he has who he thinks is like the best strength and conditioning coach doing his workouts. He has the best route runner fly in and take care of his routes. He has me to do all manual therapy. He has a dry needling specialist to do dry needling. He has a PT to do form and function. He has a chef that does his like lab work and make sure he's eating at what he needs to be eating. So he has his ozone and his IV stuff. He has his own hyperbaric chamber. So it kind of just depends on who you're working with and and you have to be flexible and be okay with not being the one in charge of everything. And I was totally okay with that. And because he knows I can dry needle and do other things, if I'm the only one that's flying in, then I can kind of take care of everything. But like when it comes to being in season, it's like this guy's flying in on Monday, you're flying in on Tuesday, this guy's flying in Thursday, Friday. And then he'll find local people to do like IVs and stuff and things like that. So yeah, it kind of just depends on who, and you have to collaborate and be, like I said, be okay with taking a step back and saying, I'm not going to be the one to deal with this. And that's okay because it's not on me. It's because he wants like the guy that's putting on the dry needling courses, and I totally like respect that, your body, your way, that works for me.
What type of manual training you have? You must be really awesome at it for them to like bring you in just for your manual specialty. So what kind of training, what kind of routine?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I keep it really simple. I don't have like a ton of like certifications. I think I've just been around and like I said, I try to absorb as much as I can from the people that I've been around and kind of what works. So for me, it's not always about going to the course and doing this and then just doing that one thing, right? So I always like to learn from people who have done all the courses and pick what I like and what works best. And then ultimately for me, it's like, what does this body need? Right. Because I can be like, oh, I'm certified in this, or I'm certified in this, that, and the other. But if that doesn't work for this person, then I can't just be like, well, I can't help you, So like I've done MDT courses, I've done like a few other courses, and I just kind of like pick and choose what I like. And ultimately, being simple is usually the best course of action. Like I don't need X, Y, and Z DPT after my name. Like it's really like a basic body that performs at a high level, but you just have to be able to just like know what's needed at that time. And oftentimes it's good old flush, like after a game, like you don't have to know how to do all these crazy things, you have to be able to use your body in a way that's going to preserve your own body, but it's kind of just like the basics. And I feel like a lot of times we get lost in trying to get like the highest level of courses or this and that. It's just like, but you can also just stick to the basics and it's very efficient, so I don't know.
That was a great quote, Michelle. That's some good advice. I love that.
Yeah.
And appreciate that insight. I'm curious, kind of transitioning a little bit. Obviously, you're with our team. You're helping Luna and in terms of growing the therapist supply and just kind of talking to people about our model and whatnot. How does this all integrate together with you traveling and working with athletes and working with Luna? How do you balance it? Yeah.
I think what's helped the most is just being able to talk to people and listen to people, right? And like hear what they want to say. And that goes, and therapists oftentimes are not listened to, right? Like we're always putting somebody else in front of us and our needs. And I feel like we've kind of flipped the script on that. And so being able to relate to people and being able to talk to different people of different walks of life, like different cultures and things like that. That's the big thing that the athletic population has brought to me. I've worked with a ton of different athletes from all over the world. So I think like that's one thing. And I just think flexibility for me is something that a lot of people seek. And I've been in a place fortunate to have that. So I think that's cool. But yeah, I think just being able to talk to people, and oftentimes they always say it's not what you know that they care about, it's that they know that you care. And I think that a lot of PTs are just, especially working with professional athletes, they just want to be like, oh, I work with this guy, I work with that guy, this girl, that girl, whatever. But like, that's not really what it's about. Like an athlete's going to trust you if they know you care about them. And same things with PTs, like they want to know that we're caring about them, right? To be able to best support their patients. So I think like that's kind of how it all comes together for me.
That makes so much
How
sense.
how do you balance that? I know you have little kids and you have three of them. So how do you balance traveling, and have you decreased how much you travel after having kids, or how do you kind of balance everything?
No, I don't think I've decreased it. I think it's a great break for me from being like on all the time. I really love alone time. So just being in like a hotel room with the air cold and like dark is kind of nice for like a night. But I think, I have a great village that supports me. My mom, my husband takes care of the kids when I'm not here. My mom lives across the street, basically, my in-laws. So I think having a good support system that like respects what you do and to not lose, who you were before kids is really important and something that was really important to you. And my support system, my husband, he really understands that. And so I think balancing that is a big tribute to what they have to do when I'm gone. And I try to limit my travel as far as like how many days I'm gone at a time. So it's not that I'm not traveling frequently. It's just like, okay, it's going to be a quick trip. And that's like pretty taxing. Like, I went to Portland not too long ago for 36 hours. So it took me longer to get there than I was actually there. So I think it's just like, you just do it, but you got to make sure that your support system is there for you. And thankfully, I'm really lucky to have a great one.
Do you have favorite sport athletes to treat? And are there any that you haven't treated like in a certain sport that you would love to, that you just haven't seen athletes from that sport?
I don't have like a preference of what I've treated. It doesn't matter. Like every body is a body to me. And like, I don't get like star-studded or people be like, oh, you work on that person. I'm like, I didn't even know who they were until I started working on them. I always ask my husband, like, do you know this person? Because I don't know them. Do you know? And he's like, yeah. So, like that's where I get my insights from. But I think it would be cool to work with soccer only because like I understand the sport the most as far as like intricacies of it, but I don't really care.
I'm curious on, you going through like athletic training school and then PT school and having a soccer connection growing up. Like, why is it the sport that you're least connected to? Is it just kind of that word of mouth initially, or
I feel like they don't really train here in Miami as much. Like, I think soccer is really big in like Europe, for example. The like now the MLS is starting to get big. So, but I've already kind of like I'm not looking for new athletes. If someone was like knocking on my door, like, yeah, I'll help you for sure. But I'm not really looking. So I feel like Miami kind of capped out at your soccer abilities after like high school. And then everyone's like, we'll just like maybe we'll go to college to play soccer, but like not really. So there's not a ton of soccer professional athletes in Miami that train here. Now I think it's getting a little bit more so, but not in the world where I grew up and started to form my connections in per se. So I think that has a lot to do with it. But yeah, I don't know. I've worked with like some in Portland because the Timbers and the Thorns were big. So one of my like old classmates, she was an athletic trainer for I don't know, one WSL team, and they're flying in to play the Thorns, and she's like, I really need help. Like, do you have this and that? And I was like, yeah, sure, I'll go help you. So I helped her, but that was like a one day like fluke. It wasn't because I actually work with them, but I would love to.
yeah, I mean, Messi's been in Miami now for what?
I knew you were going
So
there.
huge, right? So
I
Yeah,
knew
I
Joe was
mean,
thinking he's like Messi's there. I don't
yeah,
think
he is here. He's not here right
um,
now.
yeah.
yeah, he
He's
will be.
busy.
Yeah, he won't be. He'll be in New York. What would you say to people who are maybe in high school or college looking into athletic training and maybe the differences between just being an AT versus adding the PT part onto it? I don't think I learned about athletic training till a little bit later on, but now looking back at it, I'm like, man, I wish I knew more about it, and maybe I would have either stopped at athletic training or it would have kind of changed the trajectory of what I did PT wise.
Yeah. I think I think athletic training's changed a lot since I was there, but I think a big thing to consider with athletic training is it's a lot of on the field work. And granted, a lot of ortho clinics have athletic trainers in them, so you could definitely go that route. But I don't think that's the exciting part about athletic training. Like if you're going to be in a clinic, you might as well either be a PA or a PT, and that's just also from a financial standpoint. Like just to be very clear. But if you love the on the field action and, the injuries that happen there and managing those things, then athletic training is a great field for that. I have zero interest in it and I learned really quickly when I had to airlift a person that I did not want to be there anymore. But I always used it as a stepping stone to PT because for me, it was a great experience and hands-on. So I learned, so when I got to ortho PT school, like I already knew so much. Like I felt very ahead of it. There's a ton of areas that I didn't know anything about because that's not what they do. But for the grand scheme of like ortho, I felt very comfortable, like special tests, all that. We would have all that in athletic training. We had practicals, we had all that. So I was very well versed and I felt very comfortable, which I think ultimately helped me in PT school. But I think the biggest difference that I've personally experienced, I wasn't an athletic trainer for very long without being a PT, was just like that on the field aspect. And you're there before everybody else. You're there while the game's happening. You're there after everybody else. It's exhausting. And like to have a family, I couldn't see that happening for me. And I did it at the high school level and at the collegiate level. And that's like it just wouldn't happen. And then I think financially, I don't think they're compensated for all the work that they put in. Like a strength and conditioning coach, as very valuable as they are, they get paid significantly higher than an athletic trainer. But I think that the world of sports would be very lost without their athletic trainers like on the field with them. And I don't know that they're valued as much as they should be in that regard. So if that has anything to weigh on anyone's decision of being an athletic trainer or not, I think that's something that they should consider for sure.
Great advice. Yeah, no, I don't think I
That's
could have been on the field.
interesting about the strength and conditioning getting compensated more. Like I get how their minds might process that, but obviously ATs are so important. And
Yeah.
I was not an AT undergraduate. I did exercise science was my undergrad. And I almost wish I had the perspective of like an AT because like you said, you were so well prepared. They trained us in other ways and it was good. It was good education. But especially knowing that I was going into physical therapy school, I feel like, yeah, like you said, you're almost a little bit ahead of the game when you go through and have all that training and knowledge and see all of
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, absolutely. It was great.
All right. So I'm curious with your traveling and like flying around, what do you travel with? Like, what are your go-to tools? And like, what do they already have for you there? Like, do they have a high-low table or what does that typically look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it depends. Am I traveling while they're on the road, like for a game or something, versus am I traveling to their home where they probably have most things? So if we're going on the road, I used to take my table often, but because that became kind of like very hard and bag delays and things like that, I decided to not do it and we'll just kind of like set up on the edge of like either on the floor with like a yoga mat or something like that or towel or at the edge of their bed or sometimes they have like the teams have equipment that they'll let us borrow like a massage table so just try to be as efficient as possible because like I said, sometimes I'm flying in for really short periods of time and to have to wait for a bag or it gets delayed or it gets lost. It's happened too many times and it's not worth the headache, to be honest. So I no longer travel with that. I do have like a Pelican case that I travel with at times. And if I need to be doing like dry needling and stuff, all that is able to be as a carry-on. So will check all that through. I have certain like scraping, like Graston type tools that are allowed on an airplane. I've learned the
That
hard
probably
way
looks
not all
funny
of them are
going
made the
through like the
same.
X-ray machine. They're like, what
Yeah.
is that?
Yeah. So I have one that's like it's kind of like a curve that's allowed. I had one that was like those knuckle ones that you can kind of like hold on to. That's not allowed, in case you're wondering.
Brass knuckles.
Did they
Yeah,
take it?
so
What did
they
they do at
did.
TSA? Oh
They took
no.
it, yeah. Yeah. So he like felt bad, but I was like, your job's your job. Like I get it. Because it also depends, like at Miami International Airport, go through with it. And you go somewhere else and they're like, no way. So like you just kind of take your chances sometimes. I always have massage lotion, cocoa butter. Not like the pump ones, the tub. It's like a little more firm. Those are my go-to because the athletes like it too as far as like they're not like grossed out that it's like they're have it all over like
They're
after or
gonna
anything. It's
smell
not
it.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
not like messy as far as it's gonna leave something grease stained or anything like that. So yeah, I always have my gloves, my cupping set. I do have like voodoo floss bands, a mobilization belt. We do a lot of hip mobs and things like that. And I always carry a set of loop bands and sometimes like a resistance band with the grips because you never know if you're gonna need to like activate something or whatever, something like that. So I usually carry that stuff with me. And then if I'm going to their homes, usually my one client that I travel for the most, his home is more equipped than a PT clinic. So
That's awesome.
I literally I've left everything there already that I would personally need. He has needles, he has all the stim units for the needles, he has like Shockwave, he has a newbie, I mean, you name it, he has it. And so there's no way I'm taking anything. Like I just got my bag and that's it with my
That's
clothes and I'm
awesome.
good to go. Yeah.
That's really nice. I love that.
What's your thought on the shockwave? We actually haven't covered this topic yet on our podcast, but we're looking into kind of like the newer technology, the hot things. What do you think about the shockwave?
I think there's a time and a place for everything. I think that's one of them. And I think if you think it works, it works.
We like to ask, we ask ourselves this and then any guess, what's your favorite body part to treat?
Probably the knee. I have the most personal experience, so I feel like not only do I know it very well, it's a pretty simple joint as well, which I appreciate. And I can relate to like the emotional side of it and like the rehab side and timelines. I can relate to things like that. And I've had a lot of complications, so I understand a lot about what could go wrong and from a personal side, so I can relate to the athletes better as far as that goes.
I
Now
love
that you Now that you have been a PT, how do you feel about your own PT when you were in high school and you had your ACL tear? Because looking back at my own PT, I had a partial ACL tear. I never had surgery on, but I did PT. I think it was pretty. There was no like return to sport aspect or prevention or any type of testing or anything like that. It was basically like go and move your leg, and I didn't do it with a
Yeah.
PT was watching type situation.
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. I never thought about that. Unfortunately or fortunately for me now, not at the time, I went through a few different PTs because I had a lot of complications. Like I got like a staph infection and manipulations, and it was just like a really long, drawn out process that it should not have been. So my first few were awful. And they were like, "Oh, it's your fault, like you didn't bend your knee." And I'm like, "Well, I'm 15. Like what am I supposed to know, And so I appreciate them now as far as like what I don't ever want to do, to somebody. But my last PT, he was my mentor, the one that like would take me out to work with like the elite athletes and just like really coached me and kind of guided me in the right directions. He and the woman that works with him, they changed my entire like perspective on PT, like my life at the time. Sounds so silly now, but at the time you're in sophomore of high school and that's a big part of like who you are is like the sports you play and the people you're hanging around with. So they played a huge role. And so I'll always be grateful. And they changed the game. Like they would have me go run up and down the hill at the parking garage to like make sure I was running properly. And, with the tools that we had at the time, there was no dry needling or anything like that. Thank gosh. I would never want that done. But personally. But, I think it was really cool because they did understand that in order to perform at a high level, even though I was just in high school, we were like, for me, it was high level, and they were like, we got to get you back. Like there's no in between. Like you want to go play, like it's not a time, like you have to meet these things. And so they really opened my eyes to that. And so I will always be so grateful to both of them for always helping me both from a rehab standpoint, but as well as like shaping my career and like really guiding me through that.
I feel like you've mentioned it a few times now, and it's like one of the things, especially with experience in PT, that I feel like is so important is listening and just truly caring about your patients. And this can be in any kind of setting, like you said, with the athletic population. I worked with a chronic pain population for a long time. And you'd be surprised, so many of them never got that. They're like, oh, you're actually like listening to how
Yeah.
I'm feeling, what's worked, what hasn't worked,
Yeah.
what my specific goals are. Like it just makes such a difference in their outcomes, being able to provide them appropriate
Yeah.
care and just building that relationship, which it sounds like you really utilize a lot treating the athletic population too.
Yeah, like I said, it's not just about like how much it's how much you care and that they know that you care, right? So for me, it's, I'm probably not the best PT they've ever worked with, but I can guarantee you that I care the most, right? About, any little thing. And I'll check in when I'm not there. I'm checking in 2, 3 times. How's it going? What are you feeling? Like, how's the family? It's just like there's just more to them than just performance. And that, like you said, that goes to any person you work with. How's work going today? How's your week? I don't know. Has anyone stopped to ask you that? And I think that goes a long way with your patients, whether they are athletes or whether, they're kids or, whoever you work with. Chronic pain, women's health, it's like goes on and on. They're humans. And so you can't just dismiss them because of whatever reason. I think you have to really sit and listen. And a lot of times you're going to find answers to why they're in pain by listening. It's not always a physical ailment, a lot of times there's another component to it. So I think that's a really big part of it as well.
That's a great note to end on. I think. I mean, that was great.
Mhm.
I mean, I've had several quotes from Michelle right now that I feel
I
like
know, it's like
I got a mantle put on
Michelle.
my mantle to motivational quotes. So, really appreciate your time, Michelle, and everything that you've shared with us so far.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thanks
been
so
fun.
much for joining us today. And if anybody out there has any questions for Michelle specifically, send them over. We'll route them to her. Or if you have your own experiences treating athletes, we'd love to hear it. But yeah, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Luna Unscripted, and we'll see you back next week.
See ya. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to Luna Unscripted.